Happy Friday, everybody. I am pre-coffee, so we need to get started. Oh my God, grab your coffee or your second cup of coffee. Let's settle in. We've got some film reviews for you, some conversation. My colleague Alan Ng, the editor-in-chief of Film Threat, will be here. I am Chris Gore from Film Threat, and you are watching the Film Threat podcast. Welcome to the Film Threat podcast. It's Friday. Lots of movies to review. Shockingly, the Batman's not the only thing in theaters. There are other things that are being released. There are independent films you should know about. And we're going to be kicking off our South by Southwest Film Festival coverage from Austin, Texas. We'll be talking about some of those movies, giving you a preview of what you'll be getting if you go to filmthreat.com. We'll have new reviews from South by Southwest. And on Monday, we're doing a special live stream just talking about movies from South by Southwest. So join us for that. I want to thank everybody in the chat now who's joined us, and everyone who was in the chat a couple days ago where we did Hollywood on the Rocks with Christian Toto. That was a lot of fun. But let's bring on Alan Ng.
Hail chat.
Yes, hail to the chat. Hail to Alan. Hail everybody. Hail this coffee, which I really need to down this coffee. It is it's been quite a morning. Before we get started, go over to filmthreat.com, check out the site. There's new reviews on the site every day. We kind of talk about ones we really like here, and we also talk about some ones that are terrible. But if you go to filmthreat.com, new reviews every day, about 3 to 5 different film reviews every day, indie films from our writing staff. Also, if you want to support us, well, one, you can just visit filmthreat.com, but also you can pick up some Film Threat merch, like this t-shirt that I'm wearing or this mug. So pick something up from our shop and stick around. Let's get right to it. Let's see who's in the chat actually here.
I will say this week for the website is going to be all South by Southwest, and there's a lot of great movies coming out. But yeah, let's get to that chat.
Graham Robbins is here. Film Facet, The Professional Human, Gwen Stacy, Cameron Belt, MacGyver, Graham Robbins, and I don't know what he's talking about here. Let's see.
It's the history of Friday.
The history of Friday, per Earth's Julian calendar in the planet's Western Hemisphere. Yes, it is a day the humans call Friday after a female deity worshipped in early Middle Ages Scandinavia. I love it. Love it. That's great. Well, thank you all for being here. Let's get, we've got a lot to talk about. All right. We've got, first of all, we're going to be talking about Turning Red. We're going to be talking the Hyperions. And we've also got 2 directors coming on at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. 2 directors. Off-season director Michael Keating will be here today to talk to us. So get your chat questions ready. That movie opens today in theaters, Off-season. And Occupation Rainfall from director Luke Sparke. He's going to be here. That movie looks interesting. Now, I have not seen either of these movies. I've seen the trailers. They both look really awesome. We're going to have reviews at some point. But Occupation Rainfall in particular looks... it's a really expensive looking science fiction movie with Tamura Morrison and Ken Jeong of all people. You'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, we will have a review for that today.
We will have a review for that, but let's get right into it. Alan, why don't you kick us off with your review of Turning Red? I'm going to feature you full screen here as you talk. Now, Turning Red, of course, is from Pixar. It's Disney. It was originally supposed to come to theaters, and they decided to put it on streaming. And I think is it out today?
It is out today. And I will say, I think the stories surrounding Turning Red are a lot more interesting than the actual movie. Not to say it's a bad movie, but just real quick, you've probably seen the trailers, but it's about a young teenage girl who is going through her stages of change. And as a part of that, her family legacy during this time of change causes her to turn into a red panda whenever she experiences some extreme form of emotion. And so a lot of the movie is about her and her family and her friends and her trying to control turning into this giant red panda, and at the same time discovering that this is kind of a legacy that I wouldn't say it's a curse, that is passed on from generation to generation. But there is this pressure from her family to rid herself of this curse and no longer be able to turn into a red panda. Things I appreciate about it is the fact that it is a Chinese Canadian family, so I have an affinity toward that. But one of the early controversies that you brought up was the fact that it went straight to Disney Plus and not to theaters. And that was probably the best decision Disney could have made. I would call Turning Red. I would describe it as if the Disney Channel had asked Pixar to make them a movie, and this is that movie. It's another controversy that's come out recently is one. I think it was Cinema Blend. Their reviewer said this movie was not made for me. And I will say the exact same thing. This movie was not made for me. I am not the target audience of this movie. This is, for all intent and purpose, a Disney Channel movie. It's meant for younger kids, primarily girls. The girls, teen girls, are the stars of this, and they do things that teen girls do, especially going head over heels over a K-pop band. And so, I've actually gone out and said it. In good conscience, I can't review this movie because it's just not made for me. And it got annoying after a while, but annoying because I'm a much older male. And so, I'm really curious as to what my daughter will think of it. She's hopefully going to see it this weekend. But yeah, it's I wouldn't necessarily call it a film threat movie.
Well, well, Alan, wait, did you see yourself in the film?
Yeah. No.
Well,
I mean, there's, having not had Chinese American, Chinese Canadian movies at all, there's appreciation I had for the film and how it got the culture right. But at the same time, even when I was the kid's age, I wasn't acting like this, but I was a boy.
Well, let me ask, like, it feels like, because we talked about this before when you first saw it, it feels like, I mean, what's great about Pixar movies is that they tend to appeal broadly, meaning it works at various levels simultaneously. So you've got like Toy Story, kids can watch it, they're understanding it at another level. Their toys are alive, and adults can watch it and get kind of other layers to it. And it sounds like from what you're saying that this is solidly for children only. There's like nothing for adults. Would you say that's accurate?
I would say if there are things for adults, it's very sparse. And I don't know that we can necessarily fault Pixar for doing that. It's certainly out of their wheelhouse and out of their tradition. I think it has some good things to say. It does say a lot about friendship, and I appreciated that. But it's like I'm thrown back to all the Disney Channel movies I had to watch while my daughter was growing up, and this certainly falls in that category.
Well, it's weird because always, like, when my kids were younger, it was always like, okay, these are the things like we'll all enjoy, right? The whole family will enjoy, because there's, I'll get something out of it, right? I'm not going to sit there and suffer through it. Like, oh my God, Barney the dinosaur was insufferable. Insufferable.
Oh, Caillou. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I've never wanted to punch a kid in the face more than Caillou.
It's just, there's certain programming for kids where you're just like, I can't, there's nothing here for me, and I don't care, and I don't want to, I don't want to sit here and waste my time. And then there are other films, like most of the Pixar movies, that work at various levels, and that was always their reputation. I feel like this. And didn't you say like something like it's really it's about girls being boy crazy at a certain age? Is that?
Yes. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of boy craziness. I mean, it's almost the focus of the movie, outside of the family aspect of it. And I think at best for us adults, it's the movie's not so horrible that you can't sit through it. I think tolerable is the best word that I can describe. I don't think you're necessarily gonna get turned off, but it's, you know, you're gonna feel very old watching the movie.
Well, I'm gonna just take your advice and not watch the movie. So
Unless your
here,
daughter wants to see it.
well, we've got some chat comments here that are
Yeah.
interesting. Film Facet says, I had to suffer through Teletubbies, dude.
Oh yeah.
Teletubbies, though, Teletubbies is so surreal and so weird. I could see, I'm not someone that indulges in other than alcohol, but I could see that some enhancement might actually make you enjoy Teletubbies more. But um
Yeah, it's not something you're gonna actively seek. That's the thing.
and the professional human says the "it wasn't made for you" argument is meh.
Yeah.
I think it applies here, but
Yeah.
taste.
I mean, really, do you, if it's not meant for me, do you want me to review it?
Well,
Do you want my thoughts about it really on the record if it's not for me? You
well,
know, it,
I want to finish his comment. He also
yeah,
goes on to say tastes obviously vary, of course, but good storytelling should connect with people. A film like Toy Story, for example, isn't made for adults, but we love it. That's true. I
yeah,
would disagree. I actually think that Toy Story is made for adults. They knew that they were making a movie to appeal to a broad audience, which includes and I feel like Pixar's had a reputation for these films. They're just as enjoyable for adults. I think that's kind of what, Disney in the 90s when they were making basically 2D animated musicals. I mean, that's what they are, right? um, like Lion King, Beauty and the Beast. I mean, those were also made to appeal to adults. So
yeah.
I could
You know,
differ slightly on that, the
yeah, I
professional.
mean, I would say, like, we have reviewers who hate musicals, and I would never pass a musical on to them to review it because
Right.
it's not them, it's not their taste, and I think that fits here. You know, I'm giving you my opinion, and so in the case of Turning Red, I need to pass it to a reviewer who's much more apt to be inclined to like it in a way.
Well, let's switch gears here for a minute, and I'm going to talk about The Changed. Okay. This movie, how do I describe this? Um, The Changed is a low budget horror film directed by Mike Mangelo, starring Tony Todd, and it's about an event that happens around the world where everyone is sort of told to go to your local high school. The military's there. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. And what the lead characters, this couple, end up noticing is that everyone is acting weird. People are acting strange. It's I mean, I would compare this movie to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you know, the one with Donald Sutherland. It has this bizarre tone where people just start acting strange, and you come to find out that an exchange of saliva suddenly has people taken over with this feeling of bliss where you must now also join us. And it's so bizarre because the movie doesn't have like over the top gory effects. Not that there isn't violence or blood and whatnot, but the way it's portrayed is if you are kissed or there's an exchange of saliva, you then become part of this new group of people, and then their goal is now to make you one of them. There's this shot in the film where it really starts to get weird, where the couple are in this house, they've got guns, they've like they're with other friends, and they're just trying to like hold the fort, and they're surrounded by people just standing in front of their house, looking at them, waiting for them to come out of the house. That's it. They're just waiting because they're not willing to comply. What I really love about The Changed is that it's kind of about things that are in the culture. It really is about like in particular, like we've spent these last 2 years in kind of the weirdest state ever. And there is, there are divisions in this country that are undeniable, right? And there are people who have picked teams. And I'm not saying that this that this is about that. It's not about that directly. So there's no woke agenda or any even political agenda. It's about some strange virus that is kind of taking over people, but changing their personality. And you would think like, oh, okay, that sounds kind of like it's the way that it's played is so like has this tone of dread. It's frightening. It feels very relevant. I don't want to spoil anything. Just say that the tone of the movie is this really weird, like become one of us thing. And it's also some people that are they're being overly nice, which I never trust that. When someone's being overly nice to kind of like get you to do something, it's like there's another agenda here. This is weird. And that's what I felt about this film, The Changed. I mean, look up the trailer, check it out. I know it's in theaters, in limited release as an indie. It's also on video on demand, so you can find it. But and what I also loved about it, it's under 90 minutes. In an age when Batman is 3 hours, we need 3 hours to tell that. I just like, I don't know. It's just refreshing to see like, oh, this is like an under 90-minute like horror film that just like it doesn't waste any time. It gets right to it. There's this weird tone, and what I like too is just like maybe this little nerdy. I love the sound design of it because there's this tone that kind of plays in certain scenes that has you like, what's going on? What's happening? This is bizarre. But I really enjoyed the film and strongly recommend it.
Yeah, this reminds me of the conversation we had the last I don't know, Hollywood on the Rocks, but the best kind of science fiction are ones that have kind of a morality tale kind of hidden deep within it, and how our science fiction is now becoming, there's no real message. It's except for who appears on the screen, and I'm intrigued by this one.
Oh no, you got to see it. And Tony Todd also. I love Tony Todd. Can I just say I met Tony Todd on the set of the remake of Night of the Living Dead in the early 90s with Patricia Tallman. I was a featured zombie, and I was there for like almost 2 weeks, and I slept on the couch of the special effects guys. And I mean, I drove from Michigan to be a part of that movie because I was such a George Romero, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, just such a fan of George Romero. Romero was on the set. I was directed by Tom Savini, and it was just life-changing. It was like camp too, because everyone that was there, including Tony Todd and Patricia Tallman and the cast, they were all super fans. They were all there. They weren't just like actors doing a part. It's like, no, we're huge fans of George Romero. So just seeing Tony Todd's success over the years and how his career has spanned now decades, it's just great. I want to go
see you in that movie.
Absolutely. I'll tell you exactly where I am. I mean, there's a couple scenes where I'm just in the background, but when Billy Butler, the truck explodes, I'm the zombie that drags Billy Butler out of his body, his charred body out of the truck. And then what happens is a bunch of so I dragged the body, which was like this prop basically. In the center was cold barbecued chicken. I'm not making this up. It was covered in barbecue sauce. It was chicken and pieces of meat. So I dragged the body, and then other zombies come and horde in, and then we all kind of go. It was disgusting. But I want to get to the comments here because there's some really good comments. Justin Falzon says, the Critical Drinker put out a video earlier about how the heroes of modern movies suck and teach terrible lessons. I wonder if Turning Red has a similar narcissistic approach.
I think it's more about empathy and relating than it is about telling a story. That's the sense I get of Turning Red and of stories as well.
First of all, I watched that video. I watched that video before doing this live stream. So weird, Justin, timing on that. And they're talking about he talks about the comparison between at least the latest video. It's a series. The latest video, he talks about Mulan, and he compares the original animated Mulan to the live action Mulan, and how the original animated Mulan had really good lessons, had a character struggling and learning lessons, which then imparts those lessons to the audience. Whereas the new Mulan is like, she's awesome. She is practically super powered with some chi or whatever. And that's a great, I mean, I was on Critical Drinker actually yesterday. He'll on occasion invite me to his live stream. So it was really a pleasure to
Captain Marvel is the perfect example of this as well.
Right. I lost some friends over just like not liking Captain Marvel, if you can believe that. I thought it was, anyways, back to the comments here. Film Facet says, sounds like Village of the Damned and Invasion put together. Yeah, it's a bit like that. It's a bit like that, which I really like. Like The Change is definitely like that. Other comments, Fourth 1000 says, sounds like modern day. You're absolutely right. It's a weird thing of like, be a part of my team. And if you're not a part of my team, I'm going to intimidate you to be a part of my
Oh,
team.
that doesn't happen today.
That's exactly, I mean, that's like
Who does that?
That's like in personal relationships, like it's weird how people have become so intolerant of others' views. Here we go. Stepford Wives 2 is a comment from Film Facet. Fourth 1000 says CRT the movie. Justin Falzon says not programming at all. Lol. Gwem Stacy, one of us. Thank you, Gwem. I like your picture. That's awesome. Yeah, one of us. I mean, it feels like that. And Film Facet says, I miss 90-minute movies. I'm right there with you. I miss movies and stories being told in a limited time period. It's interesting. Like Lucas and Spielberg, back in the era when they were coming up, like movies were 2 hours, and it was their goal. They're like, we're making a 2-hour movie, and I'm told, don't quote me on this, look it up, that 2 hours is kind of the tolerance for people to like hear a story. If you're going to tell a big story that is like an epic, like say a Lawrence of Arabia, or a sweeping historical epic like Gone with the Wind, whatever, longer time period I think is allowed for that, right? Throw in an intermission. Thank you, Gwen Stacy.
I have a funny story about Lord of the Rings. When I saw Lord of the Rings, it got to that point where the Fellowship was created, and I was like, good, I can finally go home. And my friend whispers in my ear, there's still an hour and a half of the movie to go.
Well, but see, that was earned. Okay,
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings gets a pass on this. Lord of the Rings films are epics. They're epic storytelling. And so
a master storyteller can carry you through 3 hours. There's not that many of them.
So yeah, Scott Miller, if you can't tell your story in 90 to 120 minutes, get a better writer or editor. I agree. And I think that the reason that movies have gotten overly long and unnecessarily long is it's just too many cooks. It's just too many cooks and studio noting and I don't know. I'm disappointed. I'd really like to see us get back to that 2 hour, and 90 minutes for comedies, right? Like, come on.
But you would think the studio would want a 90-minute movie so that they can get more showings out of it.
Well, exactly. You saw. Let's segue into our next review, because we have our special guest, our first filmmaker, coming on in about 35 minutes here. But I'd like to hear your review of the Hyperions, because Alan, I did not get a chance to see it. The Hyperions premiered actually on YouTube last night.
Yeah.
Like one time, it's the last time, my understanding, the Daily Wire will be doing that. So it's free on YouTube to watch. It's a superhero film. It looks like a very low budget Suicide Squad. I'm interested just because it's the superhero genre, and I love genre films, obviously sci-fi, fantasy, horror, superhero films when they're done well. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one. I didn't get a chance to see it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk about the Daily Wire, and like I said, I don't visit their channel or website at all. But what they're doing is they're trying to be another outlet for film distribution. They didn't produce the Hyperions; they bought the distribution rights for it, and now they're presenting it on their channel. The Hyperions, though, is it's a movie that has a really great idea behind it, and it just doesn't execute it very well. And there's a main reason for that. But essentially, the Hyperions, this guy played by Cary Elwes, he's Professor Ruckus Mandelbaum. He created a what's called a Titan badge, and the bearer of this badge gains superpowers. And so what he does is he recruits children to become superheroes, and he has one older hero to kind of be their caretaker. In this case, the first crew was Vista and Ansel. Vista had the power to read minds. Ansel had super strength. And so they went out and fought crime. They made the world a better place. But when Vista started to show signs of independence, maybe not following what Mandelbaum wanted her to do, kind of did things outside of the family, she was immediately kicked out and her powers were taken away. And then when Ansel wanted to just talk to her and spend time with her, That act right there was the act of independence and got him kicked out. And then, so Mandelbaum then had to recruit more and more. And so the main story takes place 20 years later when Vista and Ansel decide that they're going to break into the Hyperion Museum and steal their badges back. And so right there, that's a pretty good idea in the sense of it hits on a lot of topics. One is this idea of family. You know, the way that Mandelbaum treated the children was as if they were his children, and in a good way. You know, he was kind of a benevolent father, and then once they showed a small sign of rebellion, he kicked them out, which right there is now a betrayal of family, and so there's a lot of those issues that are dealt with in this movie. And then there's the idea of power. You know, here's some kids who once had great power, superhero powers, and now it's taken away, and now this void is kind of left in their lives. And all this is kind of explored then in this museum heist, so to speak. The one of the great things about the movie is Cary Elwes. He's brilliant as Mandelbaum, and you know, he portrays himself kind of as a malevolent Walt Disney. He has a television show for Hyperions that is similar to The Wonderful World of Disney, and you know, and he's kind of in a way recruiting children through the show, but weirdly and not an evil way. And so there's a lot of great ideas here. The problem is the energy of this movie. You know, you talk a lot about tone and how important it is to maintain the tone. The tone just doesn't work in this movie. It's very low energy. It flies kind of at a level 6 when it really should fly at a 8, 9, 10, maybe even 11. And I think when you watch it, you're just going to get the sense that there's not a lot of, as urgent as things are and as suspenseful as things are, it doesn't feel that way. And it just kind of falls at this really low monotone level. And I think that's what works against it. So great idea, but poor execution.
I still want to check it out. I know that, like, I guess the only place you can see it right now is at dailywire.com. But
yeah,
I'm hearing mixed about it. Like, let's go to the chat and see the chat comments here. Agent 57,000 DM, the Hyperions felt like a movie that was 90% complete, but they couldn't do reshoots. I felt that way from the trailer. I'm looking at it going like, you know, the trailer's where you put your money shots, your best stuff. Mm-hmm. And the trailer looked like, okay, and so I think that's a very astute comment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a disadvantage indie films have. They just don't have the ability to reshoot. And you know, and that's why, you know, Hollywood films should never fail. You know, you've said it before, because they have the resources to be able to reshoot things and make things better.
There's no excuse for a Hollywood film to fail. There really just isn't. Scott Miller says Hyperions was a decent film, not really a superhero movie. 7 out of 10. Not every movie is going to be a Citizen Kane. Well, there you go. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I gave it a 6.5.
Yeah. What about Cary Elwes? Like, I really like him.
Oh, he was great. He's the best thing about the movie.
He seems like the best thing in the trailer. Like, I mean, Cary Elwes, everyone probably knows from The Princess Bride, probably one of the greatest things that he's ever done, and it's a movie that still holds up. I saw it like last year at the Hollywood Bowl. They have this like thing where they, you know, they'll show a movie, but then they play the orchestra and they have the music, like, so it's a live orchestra, live music, but the movie's playing, so you get to watch. It was great. It was just awesome.
Yeah, so, Robin Hood Men in Tights. That's another good one.
Exactly. And look, Hannibal Grimm says, at this point, I just want dumb, fun films. Yeah. What happened to those, Alan?
I know. This is pretty. I think you might do well with this movie.
You think so? I don't know. I mean, I will check it out. I will check it out. Just because I don't know. I
mean, not to be nationalistic here, but British films always come off as very low energy to me.
Really?
And I don't know if it's just me.
Yeah. Well, we have more comments here. Let's get through a couple of these. Godzilla versus Kong was dumb fun, says Graham Robbins. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Gwem Stacy says, such a great cast, Princess Bride. I agree. It's yeah. Elway's was easily the best part. I agree with all that.
Yeah, I just love his Walt Disney take. That's the thing that really got me.
That sounds, yeah. I want to talk about a movie that I saw recently called Infinite Storm. So I don't know if this one's been on your radar, Alan, at all.
It is, but I didn't get to see it. It's in theaters today.
It's in theaters today, so I had a chance to see it. So it's in theaters today. I assume, is it theaters and VOD or just theaters only?
I believe it's just theaters.
Theaters. Okay, so I saw Infinite Storm. What's it about? Naomi Watts plays a park ranger who her specialty is rescue, and she's visits this mountaintop where there's someone trapped there. How do they know this? Because there's a storm coming and the parking lot's completely empty except for one car, right? So she goes on a mission to find whoever it is who's clearly trapped on the mountain. And it's one of those and Naomi Watts is, I think she's great in this. I don't know. I've always liked her, but like so much of the stuff in the film is like one of those where it's just like, I don't know how that's not digital effects. She's just out in the wilderness. She's just, walking alone. And then also like in the snow, it's kind of hard to like reset that up. It's not like you can just get rid of all the footprints in the snow, but it's one of those survival movies. So that is a genre unto itself. There've been a lot of great ones in the past. This one is insane and over the top, where you just are like, how did they get these shots? There may have been, I'm just thinking in my filmmaker brain, it's like, okay, maybe they were able to do it this way. There was some sort of digital removal, but it just looks real. It's Naomi Watts, her character, versus the elements, on a mission to try and find somebody, but she needs to be rescued herself. So she falls in this pit where it's just, she's surrounded by snow, and eventually she's rescued by the person she's trying to find, who is, he's suffering through something. Is he on drugs? What's wrong with him? He's not very clear to her, but clearly he's disoriented. He's going through something. He's not the most cooperative person to be saved, right? So it's about how these two come together and survive this storm happening on a mountain. And here's the interesting part about the movie, and I don't want to get into too much of the second half of the film. I'll just give you a little tease for it. Most of these, person versus the wilderness movies, which again is a genre, they just end with the person surviving. This movie kind of ends in the middle, in the sense of it shows the repercussions of the events on the mountain. I don't want to go into too much more. It's just like at a point where I thought, well, like, this is kind of where the movie should end. And it doesn't end because there's more to the story. There's more going on with this person she's rescued. And again, I don't want to say too much. What I also like about sort of like a person versus the wilderness type of film is there's very little dialogue. There are a lot of things that happen, but there's very little dialogue. And I really wish I had seen this in a theater. I saw it with a digital screener in order to see it in advance. And I just really enjoyed it. It's one of those things that like in the theater, you're going to feel very cold. Bring a winter jacket to it. But yeah, I really recommend seeing this in a theater. It totally went to places I didn't see coming. And it kind of flipped the genre somewhat, in the sense that like we've seen this movie before. And it's sort of like in the People versus Wilderness movie and all sports films, right? It's in the sports movie, which is a genre. Do they win? Do they win? Do they win or do they lose? And in some cases in sports movies, when you lose, you actually win. For example, a lot of people, if you ask them who won in the first Rocky movie, it's not Rocky. He loses the fight, but he wins respect, which is about Rocky Balboa's character, is about he wants respect, right? He's sort of this, he's not looked on with any respect, and he's sort of even thought of as a dimwit, right? Even in the Bad News Bears, right? they lose, but really they win because they win respect, self-respect. And in a People versus the Wilderness movie, it's like, do they survive? And how are they changed from the experience? And this is different than that. It's part of that, but I think but because so much more happens in the second half of the film that I'm not going to spoil, it just makes it stand out in this genre, and I think it's really worthwhile. We're getting we have a decent number of people here watching. This is great because Alan and I would do these live streams and we'd be talking to 5 people, which was great because we could have the conversation with 5 people. Now we've got more people talking to us, and I really do appreciate that. Let's go to some of the comments. Or do you have any questions or comments?
No, I mean, you addressed a lot of things that I was just thinking. I mean, how many new stories are there? So now it's about telling the same story, but finding new wrinkles to it and finding new twists to it.
And she's really vulnerable. Naomi Watts is the whole movie to me, and she's really vulnerable. There's a scene where it's not a sexual scene, but if she gets naked and she's just sort of dealing with like her body and how it's injured, and it's like I don't want to necessarily compare it to that scene in Mandy where Nicolas Cage goes in the bathroom and screams, but it sort of reminded me of that, of just like what she's experienced, and she's just, I mean, she goes for it. So I feel like that's I feel like I admire that. Let's see some of the comments. Fourth 1000 says Naomi Watts always brought that chaotic energy. Yeah, for sure here, definitely. And Naomi Watts is a great actress. I thought her performance in The Impossible 9 along with Tom Holland was fantastic, says Graham Robbins. So yeah. And
what was that movie? Was it Film 34 or something like that?
I'm not sure.
I forget. It was just this weird comedy, this offensive comedy, and she was brilliant in it. And I've never laughed so hard at a movie when her segment came up.
ABC Cinema says, has anyone seen Under the Silver Lake? If so, what did you think? I have seen it. I thought it was amazing. Red Letter Media did a really great review of that film, which led me to I bought it. It's great. It's Andrew Garfield, and it's weird, and it's about uncovering a sex cult in Hollywood. That's the basics of it. If that doesn't get you interested. So yeah, ABC Cinema, I loved it. So thank you. Yeah. And I'm just going to throw this up. Lance Alato says, hey, Chris, you're great, buddy. Oh, thanks.
You are.
Maybe talking about I got to get a haircut. My hair is just.
By the way, Chad says it's Film 43, which reveals
Film 43.
I'm dyslexic.
Okay,
I'm
great.
dyslexic. So
and Pierce Bronson is back. Greetings, Hail Film Thread.
Hail Piers.
Yeah, Hail Piers, you were along for the ride with us for the Christian Toto interview, which it was great. It's a Gungan is back, and I got your name right this time. I watched Mandy on a plane. How could you watch Mandy?
I know.
On a phone. I thought that was said plane. What can I say? I watched Mandy on a phone. Yeah, I don't know. Mandy on a phone, probably not. That would be like, I don't know, like watching Inception on a phone. I don't know. You want the big theatrical experience. So, and let's hear. Hannibal Grimm says that film is an experience when you see it in a theater. Not sure which film you're talking about, but you're talking about movie 43. Not quite sure. But
you've not seen that one?
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, you need to see that one.
I've heard of it. Okay.
Oh,
refresh my memory. Is that the movie that movie 43 is like? They're all talking about it in the chat.
It's a series of gross out anthologies, and
yes.
And I don't even want to describe her segment because it is so wrong but great.
Awesome. Well, we've got some more movies to review before we get to our first special guest at the top of the hour at 10 a.m. At the top of the hour, I sound like a radio DJ. I'm not trying to do that. But Alan, you saw, what was the other movie you saw? Did you see Drive My Car?
I only saw half of it. It's 3 hours long.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And from what I understand, the film's greatness happens in the back end of it, and
Well, I
it
hear
takes
it's
a while to get
very
there.
long. I
It is
hear it's
very
very long.
long.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about, there's a couple things that we could talk about. We can talk about the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer, although we did kind of talk about that already earlier this week. Or we could talk about, I put out a tweet. If you do want to follow me on my personal social media, I'm that Chris Gore. So I'm that Chris Gore on Twitter and Instagram. My Instagram's just, I don't know, weird stuff. I'll show you. But my Twitter, I don't really interact so much on Twitter, and I don't tweet all that much other than promoting things. But every once in a while, I'll put out like, here's some thoughts. And I put out a tweet where I basically just said, nerds, we had a good run. And people asked me, well, like, did something happen? What happened? Like, what's going on? Like, and really my reason for wanting to put that out is I just kind of feel like nerd culture might actually be over, right? I mean, they've already talked about that, like, are people sick of superhero movies? I would say with the success of Spider-Man No Way Home, that's not true. People like a well-made superhero film. I think that, the Batman, it might have not done as well at the box office. We still don't have final numbers on the Batman, but I think that nerd culture, like anything cool, because anything cool is just sort of a small group of people are into it, and then it gets co-opted in a corporate sense, kind of like when corporations throw out rainbows in June, right? Like it's so corporate. That started as something organic within the gay community, using the rainbow as a symbol, and now it's been completely co-opted, and it's also been politicized now in a way that I don't know is necessarily, healthy in terms of, keeping this country united, right? But in any case, I feel like nerd culture has just been completely corporatized. Does that make sense? I'm curious what the chat thinks. And it's just like, my thoughts on it are like, go back to the original series of Star Trek, and Star Trek The Next Generation. There was a shepherd of that show, and it was Gene Roddenberry. Whatever you think about him personally, he had a philosophy for the original Star Trek series. And then he was involved, at least in the early stages, the beginnings of Star Trek The Next Generation. But even after Gene Roddenberry was no longer a part of Star Trek The Next Generation, his spirit loomed large. I mean, it was always like, well, what would Gene do, right? And I feel George Lucas, same thing. He created Star Wars, the shepherd of it. Obviously, a lot of other creative people involved, but it was always like, this is George's thing. And same thing with, like, we were talking earlier about the Lord of the Rings film. The Lord of the Rings film, the shepherd was Peter Jackson, who deferred to Tolkien, and everything was always like, what would Tolkien do? And I feel like there's maybe even like a disrespect, or a like, well, the original creator did this, but it's modern times now, so we're just going to do it our way, right? And this is why, if Kenobi does fail, which I think Kenobi could be, really could be great in the sense that it's bridging the prequels and the original series, but I don't have trust in the people that are shepherding these series, because they don't defer to the original creators. And I feel like whenever you do that, it's just fanfic. It's just fanfic. George Lucas didn't write Kenobi, isn't producing it, is more than likely not involved in much sense at all. So to me, once you get past the original person who created the thing, well, that's fanfic now. Now it's fine. When you look at something like a character like Batman, that's like, God, wait, Batman is like 80 years old, right? Or more than 80 years, 1939. I don't know. Let me check when it was. May 1939. That's a reprint, folks. Okay, so the character's over 80 years old, but people have added to the story. Other writers, the television production, the original 1966 Adam West television series had an impact even on the comics. Certain
He's
runs
even gone through several genre changes. And
right. Frank Miller, had a take on Batman. There have been different writers who have had an impact and added to the legacy of Batman while also respecting, the character's past, right? So
or what made the character the character, the
exactly. So I want to ask, the chat and your thoughts, Alan. Is nerd culture over? And I say this because I just look at all this stuff and I'm like, looking at the Marvel movies and what's upcoming, I'm not particularly, super excited about the direction that the MCU is going. I'm looking at Star Wars and seeing, there's a lot of member berries here, but is it a story that needs to be told? I'm not sure.
I'll give you the idea of when it changed for me. It's nerd culture is over because it was taken out of the hands of the nerds and given to a corporation.
Bingo. I think that's the answer, is that once corporate culture kind of gets a hold of something, it's like, I mean, this is going to sound like old man yelling at cloud, which is something that happens every episode of this live cast. So my apologies in advance. But it's like, I remember going to the Sundance Film Festival in the 90s, and there was like an energy to it. And it was this sort of homegrown thing, and like, movies being played in libraries. And now you go there and it's just all taken over by brands.
Yeah.
Right. There's the Dropbox Lounge. This isn't a joke. Dropbox has a lounge you can go to and get coffee and, get an offer code to get money off of Dropbox. It's like, it's not about the thing that inspired it. It's taken over by brand marketers trying to reach a demographic. Same thing with San Diego Comic-Con, having gone to that since the early 90s and seen it. It really was a shift around 2007 where it's just like, oh, this is getting too big now. And that was the year that I believe, I forget what hotel I was staying at. I think it might've been the Hard Rock, and Paris Hilton had come to the hotel and they were offering people money to exit their hotel. So Paris Hilton and her entourage would stay. What the hell is Paris Hilton doing at San Diego Comic-Con? She's just there for the scene, right? So it's like, it's this small thing by creators. San Diego Comic-Con was a comic convention.
Yeah, remember what you used to do at a comic convention? You used to buy and sell comics.
It was this tiny, it was a tiny thing that grew beyond, and then sort of like, then it's the corporate interest. It's Marvel and DC and this and whatever. And, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. And then you've got your outside, if you don't even get it past the Comic-Con, you can still enjoy all the outside activations where you'll wait for 2 hours to see some trailer for an NBC TV show and then get a keychain. It's just kind of feels soulless. And this is what I'm feeling about nerd culture.
Yeah. We've got this is the challenge I have for you, because you're going to Star Wars Celebration.
Yes, I am. I bought tickets.
Is it gonna feel like a fan event, or is it gonna feel like a corporate event?
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, fans are the ones that create these things, right? And then corporations come on and glom onto it.
It was a celebration for fans. It wasn't necessarily a celebration for Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh, and Saul Stone says, enable super chats, guys. I don't know.
We're getting there.
I think we had a problem with our monetization, not anything nefarious, nothing we did. It was like a technical glitch, and we're trying to fix it. But
it was an accounting thing.
Saul Stone won't be our last live cast. We're doing them twice a week. Next week it'll be 3 times because we're doing South by Southwest. So just come back, and we appreciate that you're thinking about that. Here we go. Let's get to the comments on this topic. Infinite Main says nerd culture got hijacked years ago. HW is Hollywood has squeezed all the juice out. I think you're right. I mean, that's what it's about. It's just gotten hijacked. Yeah. Graham Robinson,
they realize there's money in nerd culture, and so they had to take it over.
It's with everything. There's money in, just as an example, because I have friends who are gay who can't stand the co-opting of the rainbow flag from every social media account by every corporation. It's pandering. Pandering, and they've co-opted something that started organically, and then it's a corporation looking at and also, by the way, we sell a rainbow shirt on the Film Threat site. If you go to shop.filmthreat.com, it's the shirt is based off the Star Trek the Motion Picture logo, which kind of has a rainbow, and then and there you go. We also have a Film Threat logo as an American flag. So what can you say? I don't know that we're not particularly corporate at all. It's like Alan and I and a bunch of very dedicated, passionate fans. But let's look at Graham Robbins' comment here. How many of us took it in the shorts because we enjoyed Star Trek or Star Wars or fantasy or comics or tabletop gaming, and now we're the bigots?
Yeah.
Bingo
Absolutely.
there.
Great comment.
Yeah, we were the oppressed, certainly not the oppressors. It's true. It's weird, like how, like, it's weird. It's weird how, like, there's been this bullying that has shifted to now, like, nerds are being, it's just weird. Now the nerds are being the bullies about certain things. I don't know. It's very bizarre.
So basically, corporations bought nerd culture and made Twitter its gatekeeper.
Yeah, that's true. Paint Chips says today's Hollywood is producing the equivalent content to late 70s, early 80s network television, sanitized Love Boat, sitcom level, lowest tard gets a cookie, little effort, cut and paste hack scripts. Jeez, Paint Chips, you should write for Film Threat. I really like that. Yeah. I love that comment. That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's something I've just been feeling for a while, and I'm like, because the main thing is that I would always love when Gene Roddenberry or George Lucas would speak about, like, Star Trek or Star Wars, or, there's a lot of the Tolkien has those famous letters he wrote back to fans where he explains the world that he built with Lord of the Rings, and the people that are creating these things now aren't like that. They're generally hired guns by corporations, and they're supposed to now be the caretakers of these series, but without respect. My real disappointment is Star Trek. Star Trek, I watched the first 4 episodes of Discovery and just wasn't fully engaged. And I had, watched Star Trek, Next Generation, Voyager, whatnot, and kind of fell off. I feel like it was just like, it's too much Star Trek. Just for me, that's where I stand. I'm a original Star Trek series, TOS, right? Or STNG. The new Star Trek just doesn't feel like Star Trek. And I think it has to do with the values that were espoused in the original series. And even like, and a lot of people complain. I see a lot of people complain about Star Trek in videos and Picard, which I have not seen, but it's all I see is people complaining about it. And the complaints are things that speak to me, where it's like, oh, I know I will not like this. I absolutely know it's just not for me. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Alan, on that?
Yeah, you mentioned a lot. I'll bring up. I brought up last time Walt Disney.
Yeah,
where's Walt Disney in the Walt Disney Company now? He was about business. He was a ruthless businessman, but he was still a creative genius. And that creativity and that willingness to test the boundaries of children's stories even is lost and gone.
Right. Well, I'm really loving the comments. So thank you for all your great commentary here. The professional human, the caretakers are just looking for ways to put their mark on whatever it might be. Yeah, it's like if you've ever had 2 cats and there's urination where it shouldn't be, they're marking their territory. Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, etc. Yeah, I don't understand that. I think it's narcissistic in a sense. Like, the original creators created this vast world, and you kind of have to follow the rules of the world. I think the most egregious example is the way that Star Wars was handled in the sequels. I mean, I think what's weird is there are people who love Force Awakens, hate The Last Jedi, or the reverse, but everyone was united in thinking The Rise of Skywalker was terrible. Absolutely awful. Scott Miller says DS9 was classic.
Oh, I love DS9.
Black man as a lead and 2 female as his officers. Yeah, and you know what's so funny?
And who cared?
No one was talking about that.
Yeah.
No one talked about it. It was like Avery Brooks, great actor. And his whole story arc with his son is so moving. And it's just, there's actually a really good documentary about DS9 that you have to see. I believe it's out from Shout Factory.
Yeah, and I know it's out there. You can see it, I believe, for free as well.
I think is it called What We Left Behind?
Yeah, that's it.
It's kind of an innocuous title, but just look up Deep Space Nine documentary. It's on Shout Factory. Really amazing doc. But the point is this: back then, this is the thing. Everybody wants to talk about, you know, DIE, right? Like diversity, inclusion, equity, and it's not as if we're just started doing that now. I think that's naive. Like it was done a long time ago, right? Now it's just being pointed out to you. And you know, I don't know. I think it's ridiculous. Like we talked
it's to me, it was, in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, the fight was for equality.
right.
It was the ability to have the same opportunities that white folk had. But now it feels like it's about revenge, and it's about trying to rebalance the scale. And the problem is it's forced, and it's not organic at all. And
Right.
that's why a lot of the diversity choices feel, they don't feel organic to the story that's being told.
Well, it's like, for example, I think we were talking about this the other day, and I mentioned when Ridley Scott was casting Alien, did he think to himself, I want an intimidating black man to be the engineer? He didn't think that. He just thought Yaphet Kotto was a brilliant actor, and when he's just a great actor. That's why he was cast in the original Alien from 1979. So Voltar asks, our special guest is going to be here any minute now, but Voltar asks, what do you think George Lucas's sequel trilogy would have been about? Now, first of all, I don't think we'll ever know. We're never going to know what it was.
Yeah, we'll never know.
They
bought the script and they burned it.
But I know that some of the ideas that were contained in his original sequel trilogy outline were used in this trilogy. I just would have liked to have seen Han, Luke, and Leia reunited, and it's a crime that we'll never get that. So there you go. We have a special guest here joining us today. So chat, get ready with your questions, and you've got to check out the trailer for this film. Offseason is haunting. It's bizarre. It's about a couple who goes to this island that's a vacation destination in its off season, and they can't leave. I believe it's in theaters today. Mickey Keating is going to talk to us about it. Let's welcome Mickey Keating, the director of Offseason, to the Film Threat podcast. Mickey, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very, very excited.
This is great. Well, great to have you on. First of all, tell us about this movie, the development of it. I don't know anything about the behind the scenes. So how did the project get in development, and what was your pathway to getting this movie onto the big screen?
So I grew up in Florida, and I've always wanted to make a creepy kind of Southern Gothic Florida movie. And so I was able to convince my producer, Eric Fleischman, who produced my previous movie, Carnage Park. I was like, let's all go down to Florida. It's going to be a really crazy time, and we'll make a really scary kind of horror movie. And so that was kind of the jumping off point to get this film made.
Well, I mean, Florida is kind of a character in the movie. Is that like a fair thing to say? Were you inspired by the setting?
Oh yeah, I mean, Florida's a really weird place, and increasingly so. So, it definitely. I love just the way that the Spanish moss hangs from the trees, and I really love Southern Gothic movies and Southern Gothic books. So, it really was that kind of effort to do something like, all the fallout of Disney World, like all the Disney ripoffs. Like let's make a movie about that, about those tourist traps, things like that.
But it's the other thing about it is the people, right, that are there, the people that are the locals, right?
Yeah.
And I guess you could sort of wonder, because vacation destinations, there is an off season where it's like the vacationers come in and then they're gone and the town gets back to normal, so to speak. I think there's a reason that the term Florida Man exists.
Yeah.
In fact, I think there's a documentary called Florida Man, but like what went into the casting of the characters, both your protagonists and the creepy islanders, so to speak?
Well, I love Jocelyn Donahue. I think she's a brilliant actor, and I love The House of the Devil is a great film. And Joe Swanberg, I've been a fan of his as a filmmaker forever, and I love him in You're Next. I just think he's great. And so basically those, and Richard Brake from Rob Zombie's movies, I met him at Sundance and I had seen 31. I was just like, oh my God, you're absolutely brilliant. And Melora Walters, I've loved her forever. So I was able to convince these actors to come down, and then I really wanted specific kind of local Florida actors, and we shot in this really small town, and so a lot of the casting of the locals just came from people who wanted to be in a movie, and I think it kind of adds this like level of authenticity as opposed to just dragging a whole bunch of people from Pasadena down to this little town in Florida.
Although you accurately described, I live in Pasadena. I'm in Pasadena right now. So
Right.
that's a perfect comparison. What went into the creepy tone? I always think that like the mark of a talented director is creating a tone for the movie. And this one certainly has an eerie jump scare tone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, I just love ominous dread. I love really movies that have like real heavy atmosphere, where you almost like the sound design and just the visual is part of the character, it's one of the characters as well. So, I think you always look towards something like Mulholland Drive or like something in that regard, but also the effort to do, if you're doing Southern Gothic, really kind of leaning into that strong ambience, and I love movies that are covered in fog. So I insisted on having real practical machines do all this stuff, and it was a nightmare, but I think it was worth it at the end.
For those that are unfamiliar, can you explain like what Southern Gothic is? Because I'm a fan of that genre, and to me it's like it's definitely a tone. It definitely feels Southern. It's like a Southern horror movie, but there's more to it.
Yeah, I think it's this kind of uniquely Americana brand of like post Civil War decay in the South, and really kind of the haunting nature of all the fallout of that occurred after the Civil War. And so I think like specific imagery would be like, instead of a haunted mansion, like old haunted instead of a haunted castle, it's like old haunted mansions in the swamps and things like that. So that's kind of specifically like William Faulkner does that so much in his books. And then you see something like Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, which is a brilliant Southern Gothic movie from a while back. So it's really just that kind of uniquely decaying Americana, I feel like.
Let's talk about Joe Swanberg in the film. Like, for those that are unfamiliar with his career, Joe has been an actor, both an actor in his own movies and other movies. And Joe Swanberg kind of innovated the indie film genre of mumblecore.
Yeah.
Your film is not mumblecore,
Thank
but you're a fan of it. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts on mumblecore. I think that it's also like a great, because it's like a great way to make an indie movie, right? It's a lot of experimentation and also improvisation. But I'm curious, like, I don't know, I'm a Joe Swanberg fan. You're a fan, obviously. He's in your movie, but tell me a little bit about working with Joe Swanberg.
He's brilliant. And, as a fan of his movies, I think there's something so exciting about the kind of rhythm he brings to the character and to the line delivery. And I said from the beginning, this movie was very, particular in terms of, I storyboarded the whole thing, but I said, go and improvise, do what you do best. And I think that's the great thing about the mumblecore movement, because objectively, I mean, it definitely created a whole kind of new subgenre of cinema in a way. And it's just so exciting to kind of see him grow and develop as a director, because I think he is the Robert Altman of today's generation. And so I really love all of his films, his early films, but he's really started to elevate and make bigger and bigger movies. I think Drinking Buddies is, as good of a theatrical film as anything out there. So yeah, he's just brilliant. I love him. I think he's great.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Robert Altman, because I'm a fan of Robert Altman's work, obviously, like MASH and Nashville. Even like I'm not a fan of country music, but I love that movie Nashville. And he kind of innovated this thing where two people are having conversations at the same time, which is technically in filmmaking a no-no, right? Like, you don't want two people talking at once, and you can kind of focus in on one of the conversations. And I love that aspect. Wow, like that makes a lot of sense. We've got questions and comments in the chat. If you wouldn't mind taking some
Sure.
questions from those people in the chat here. This is funny. It's a Gungan says Chris Mumblegore. So maybe your movie's a Mumblegore. So there you go. Biggles Met says this sounds very interesting. I am awful at watching horror movies. And then a comment here. A Cynica says Southern Gothic might include voodoo.
Sometimes, yeah, sure. I mean, it's like, let's throw the broad umbrella. This movie's not a voodoo movie, though.
Yeah. There you go. And then it's a Gungan also says, good job getting Jocelyn Donahue incredibly underrated. Can you talk again about working with her?
Yes, I mean, she is just brilliant, and she's it's so exciting with this movie. I mean, from the very beginning, we kind of talked about, it's like, you're not going to be this, Rosemary's Baby at the end of Rosemary's Baby the entire time. This isn't some screaming, over melodramatic kind of character. And so I think she was really able to bring this like level of kind of, she brought it very kind of down to earth in the way that because with a lesser actor it could be way over the top, and I think she really kind of anchored it in a really exciting way. But she's amazing, and it's like shooting in Florida is really a nightmare, especially when we shot, because one day it would be 30 degrees and 30-mile-an-hour winds. The next day it was 85 degrees and everyone was being eaten alive by mosquitoes. And she was just very game for it all. So that was really exciting, because this wasn't sexy Miami. You know what I mean? Like, this was like middle of nowhere Florida, which is really a hard ask of somebody to come and do. But she was more than generous in terms of shooting. So that was great.
Yeah, that's the one thing I think that, having made films myself, that like it's not glamorous. It's really production is my least favorite part of making films. It's so hard, and it's really not glamorous. And then also you've got some, horrific things that happen in the film. Can you talk about like what it's like to do those scenes and like, especially when it comes to like practical effects?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so I mean, there's one scene I don't want to spoil, but Jeremy Gardner, who's another brilliant actor and director. If you haven't seen The Battery, I mean, it's one of the best zombie movies made, and he basically had to get covered in these prosthetics, and I was just they took hours to get on. They were in his eyes. They were pulling off his eyelashes, and I was just like, Jeremy, I'm so sorry. Next movie will be much better. But I think that's what's important, especially with horror movies. I don't know how to do much CGI. I'm not really a big CGI guy, so I always encourage practical filmmaking first and foremost when we can. So yeah, I love Jeremy. He was very patient. Thank you, Jeremy.
Well, I love directors with that philosophy. I mean, Christopher Nolan in particular, he's a guy that like will only use digital effects if there's no other way to do it. Mm-hmm. He prefers practical effects. So kudos to you for that. We have a lot of people who watch the Film Threat podcast that are aspiring filmmakers and aspiring creators. Would you mind offering some pieces of advice? Like, how can people get to the place that you are, and that is large on the screen on the Film Threat podcast talking about a movie, but also like just like to get that pathway of getting a film made and being in the director's seat, or there's a lot of other positions on a film set, producer, whatnot. So what are some pieces of advice that you would offer?
I think first and foremost, storyboard the movie. The Coen brothers say it absolutely best when they say, if you storyboard a film and you only need 2 walls of a set, then you don't have to waste money building 4 walls. I think that's brilliant advice, and it definitely is able to keep the budgets down, because nobody wants to offer money. So if you can make it an enticing enough deal for somebody, I think that's always great. Get Final Cut. I think insist on Final Cut if you're making a film, especially an independent film. Producers should trust the director. And those are my 2 kind of strong advices, because it's too easy to get, especially in the independent world, it's too easy to get taken advantage of. So know what you want, get Final Cut, and try to keep the budget down the best that you can.
I also say one of the things I've learned is that filmmaking, more than any other art form, requires both a business sense
Mhm.
and a creative ability, and you kind of have to balance those, right?
Mhm.
Like, can you speak to that a little bit, like just as being a creator, and then it's like, but from a business sense, X, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, film is a collaborative art form, and we're not just making these movies and putting them in drawers. You want audiences to see it. So I think the most important thing is to keep the audience in mind, whether it's you want to make something appealing that everyone likes, or you actively know, like, I'm trying to push the envelope and I want to challenge the audience's perception of what a horror movie can be, or what, a traditional narrative can be. As long as you're constantly thinking about the audience, you have a stronger chance of making a movie that one way or another is commercially viable. And I think that's the most important thing, because no one wants to lose their money on a movie, right? Like, and there are way easier ways to make monies through investment. So you have to be able to, it's like when I made my first movie, we made it for $25,000, and we basically kind of like cobbled it together with like $1,000 from my brother or a friend. And so while we were editing the film, my brother would call me up every other day, like, where's my $1,000? So I think that kind of is like a great insight into being like, you have to appreciate and respect the people that are giving you money, and try to make a movie that gets eyes on it the best that you can.
Now the movie is in theaters today. Is that right? It's theaters today. On demand at all? Like,
Yeah.
also
Yeah,
on
it's
demand?
simultaneously on demand, so you can get it anywhere where you can, anywhere. But yeah, it's playing, if you're in Los Angeles, it's at the Alamo Drafthouse in the Lemley, and then it's playing in a few more Alamo Draft in New York, and then slowly, kind of the 15th, it will be at San Francisco at the Drafthouse. So it's Drafthouse all over, and it's playing in a few other cities, which is really, really exciting. But it's COVID. We're still in a pandemic. And so if you're more comfortable watching it at home, just please watch it as big and as loud as you possibly can, and in the dark. That's all that matters.
Yeah, for sure. And a question here from our chat: Has Mickey, from Bill4393, has Mickey seen the Batman and the Obi-Wan trailer? Have you had time?
Bill, I'm sorry. Those are not. I understand the ravenous fan base, but those are not my kind of movies. But I saw the Batman trailer. I think Pattinson's awesome. But Obi-Wan, no, I have not.
Oh, and then here we go. Hannibal Grimm. I love Alamo so much. It's my day job. Oh, Hannibal Grimm works at the
wow.
Alamo Drafthouse. That's great. Well,
I
hope your theater is showing Offseason. Mickey Keating, thank you for joining us on the Film Threat Podcast. Can people follow you on social media? Is there a way people can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Insta. I'm really late. I'm on Instagram. That's the only one I'm on. So it's just my name on Instagram.
Great. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on the movie, and everyone check it out. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Take care. Bye. Later. Bye. Awesome.
Oh, there
we go.
Big.
Let's do a reset here. Well, thank you, chat. Some good questions there.
Yeah.
We like to bring on when we can filmmakers whose movies are playing in theaters or on demand, a lot of indie filmmakers. I think that's an option now. There's still people not comfortable going to theaters. I'm not one of those people. I'm the first day the theaters were open, I was there. I was actually at the ArcLight in Pasadena, which is now closed. The whole ArcLight theater chain is actually,
they're all gone.
It's gone. I saw the last screening on Monday because they had closed everything, and I saw The Invisible Man, and I was the only one in the theater. And I think I put these photos on my personal Instagram at that Chris Gore, and it's just me in a theater by myself watching The Invisible Man. It was the last show, the 9:30 show, and then it closed, and it's actually locked up, which sucks. So there you go. Yeah. Hey, I appreciate all the love in the chat. That's great. So there you go. We've got another special guest, filmmaker, that's going to be coming on at 10:30. This is the director of a indie science fiction film that's coming out called Occupation Rainfall. You can check out the trailer. Don't do that now. Check it out later. But it looks epic. It looks epic and weird. And Tamira Morrison is in it. Ken Jeong. So we're going to talk to the director, Luke Sparke, at 10:30. Until then, let's maybe shift back to this topic, because I could see it really got some people talking, and it like, I know that like I don't post a lot on my personal Twitter, like in terms of just like thoughts I have, just because I'm like, I don't want to debate people. I don't want to get in some stupid fight with people, which is kind of what, I mean, a friend of mine once said Twitter is where, celebrities go to apologize. I think it's just an awful place. This is a better place to have a nuanced conversation. I believe YouTube is a really great place for that. We can interact with people in the chat. We can respond to your comments. You can comment on what we're saying. You could disagree. We can have a nuanced conversation. You can even talk amongst yourselves in the chat, which I love. So thank you.
We should probably address the fact that we have not seen the Adam Project.
Oh yeah. So Bill 4393, neither of us have seen
today, so
it just came out today. We will get to it next week. But yeah, Twitter is bad. I think it brings out the worst in humans. It makes me feel sad for humanity. And then I go to say my local bar in Pasadena, the 35er, and everybody just gets along. Nobody cares.
It's the way we act on Twitter or online versus the way we act in front of each other. It's a world of difference. And
infinite.
I miss those days.
Twitter is a dumpster. So yeah, like, oh yeah, Biggles _Met says Chris once said something about how long a movie should be, and everyone got mad. It was a weird day on Twitter. Yeah, I didn't really engage. I just put out normalized 2-hour movies or something, and then like all these people, it was Film Twitter, which I don't consider myself to be a part of. I'm not a part of Film Twitter. I think that a lot of those people are sort of arrogant and misinformed, and just like are a bit narcissistic in terms of, thinking their views are the be all end all. I don't think that about myself. I like to hear opinions that differ from my own, but people were kind of mean assholes for no reason. And I just don't engage. I don't look at the comments. I just kind of back away, and I just let that shit show play out all by itself. So yeah, I don't go. It's so weird. Like, yeah, I don't go on Twitter a lot. It's weird. I've got a decent sized following on Twitter, and I got verified mainly because I was on Attack of the Show back in the day. But first of all, now I'm like embarrassed to be verified, because most of the people that are assholes are the people who are verified. But there's only one advantage to being verified, only one that I can see. And that is you can click and look, there's an extra tab you get where you can see everyone else who's verified who follows you. And that's it. And it's just sort of, I find that kind of interesting. So there you go. Graham Robbins, 20 years ago, if you put your stream of consciousness on a blog or whatever, it was thought of as odd. And now with Twitter, somehow it's extolled as virtuous. We're definitely in the darkest timeline. I agree. Infinite Main, Twitter would be a nicer place if users posted their home address instead of pronouns.
Self-doxing, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't take anyone seriously if they have like an anonymous picture. I take them less, unless I know who they are. Like, for example, It's a Gundam, right? Like, It's a Gundam, his YouTube channel is fantastic, and It's a Gundam has appeared. It's a Gundam. Like, I understand like wanting to be anonymous in some sense, but I think if you're gonna if you're gonna be an asshole, at least let's see who you are. Patrick Lemire, did you see the site that tells you when the best times to pee during long movies? Not only the site, that's a sign movies are too long. There's not just a site, there's an app. It's called Run Pee, and I bought that app years ago.
Did you start it when the movie starts, and then it gives you a beep when you?
No, it tells you when an inconsequential thing is happening, and you go to the like when you see this happen or this line is said, go to the bathroom. And it's always something inconsequential. And it is at a part in the movie where there's a lull. I think all movies have a pee moment, right? And then what it does is you go to the bathroom, you come back, then you use the app, you look at it after, and you can reveal what it is you missed. So then it describes the exact scene that you missed. It's funny in Star Trek, it's like after the planet Vulcan gets blown up, and there's this sort of montage of Vulcan refugees. And that's when they tell you to run pee. That's the original Star Trek, the first one by J.J. Abrams. Which,
in the Batman, it's when Batman and Catwoman are on the roof of a building. You can go.
Right, yeah. Well, that happens a couple of times. So
the one in the magic hour, I'll say that.
ABC Cinema says thoughts on the Terminator franchise being a prequel to the Matrix. Is that canon? Is that like, I mean, I first of all, I kind of like that idea. It's I don't know, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, that would, it's like Alien versus Predator. It's a fun crossover.
Okay. This is a totally off the wall topic. Chris, how do you get your hair to stand up like that? What products do you use? Sometimes I don't use products. I just woke up and my hair was like this, but I'll just use sort of your cheap whatever. But like back in the day when I was mostly broke, not that I'm also not mostly broke now, we would use Dove soap. This is true. An old school punk rock trick. You use Dove soap, you kind of lather it up, and then you put it in your hair. And I had a friend of mine who had like a full mohawk. The way he got it to stick up was just suds from Dove soap. They harden, and your hair is sticking up, courtesy of Dove soap. That's when I couldn't afford your normal. I don't know. I just use like your cheap, whatever, like the cheapest sort of. And I don't use a lot of it. It's just like, yeah, Elmer's glue. You could use. Gwen Stacy says you can use Elmer's glue. That's true because
that's what they used to do.
Yeah. It's non-toxic. It'll wash out of your hair. Yeah, Elmer's glue is great for getting a punk rock.
The old 80s mohawks, I believe, were done that way.
Yeah, and Hannibal Grimm says, I had hair once. Hey, you know what? Jean-Luc Picard, one of the sexiest men in the galaxy, also may have had hair once. So there you go. Our special guest will be coming on in a few minutes here, but I strongly recommend that you check out the trailer for Occupation Rainfall. Check it out after the stream. The director is going to be here. It's an incredibly ambitious, science fiction movie. I wish I don't know if we should be showing trailers on the channel. I would like to start to do that.
That'll get that episode demonetized.
It'll get the episode demonetized, which kind of sucks. Like, I would like to be able to do that in the future. Just because there are so many. I've gone down, I want to actually do a stream where we just look at trailers, just knowing it's going to be demonetized. And I want to watch all the trailers from October Coast. Okay. October Coast has like they're I mean, the movies some of them are so bad. One of them, they had a movie called Baby Frankenstein, which is weird. And then a new one, they just came out. You can look it up. Okay. October Coast on whatever they're just look it up on YouTube. It's called Amityville in Space. This is a real movie. It's the house from Amityville somehow gets launched into space, into a black hole, encounters a spaceship, and the house haunts the spaceship, and it looks like it was made for $5. It's so cheesy. So, and I'm not recommending this movie. I haven't seen it. Like, yeah, October Coast, It's a Gungan says October Coast, a sister brand of the Asylum. I mean, it may be. I think they have put out some of their movies, but it's like they put out, what was one of their other movies? Correct me if I'm wrong. Sharkula. They do a lot of like bad shark movies, like Sharkula, which is basically like a shark with vampire teeth. Another one they did was Jurassic Shark. There's another one, Noah's Shark.
Yeah, I believe they did Sharkenstein.
There's Shark Exorcist. There's Ouija Shark. We should do like a marathon of, I mean, these movies are I love bad movies just because they're bad. Like it's not like going into the Batman or the Obi-Wan Kenobi series where you have expectations. When I see Sharkula, I have no expectations. I know it's going to be terrible. Just like like Sharknado, right? Says Trinoculus P. Like, yeah, like a good bad movie is fun. And I think that's where, like, as Hollywood becomes increasingly like terrible, like, wokeness has just sort of invaded everything to just make it soulless and uninteresting and uncreative and super corporate with all the check boxes that have to go to make a big corporate movie. I've sort of like what's been virtually unaffected are a lot of horror films, like Offseason, right? And I like the fact that a lot of, low budget indie movies have been relatively unaffected unless it's the story of the movie, right? Part of the story. But like, that's why I love like a good, bad movie. And look, D Shizzle says Sharkula sounds like Oscar bait to me. Just kidding. No, but like, yeah, it's SM Lewis. Sounds like Sci-Fi Channel. Like, I don't know. These are
or what Sci-Fi Channel used to be until
right. I don't even know if the Sci-Fi Channel is like, these aren't even good enough for Sci-Fi Channel.
I don't.
Right?
No one talks about Sci-Fi Channel anymore, or at least not in my circles.
But I love like the posters for the. Just look up October Coast. There's also Trauma. One of my favorites is. It's weird because there's like this social message, but it's done in such a ridiculous way that you can't take it totally seriously, which is Poultrygeist. You heard of Poultrygeist? And it's about this fast food chain. It's like a horror film that takes place at a fast food restaurant, with the message being like about eating meat and sort of anti-fast food corporate. Most of the Trauma movies are very anti-corporate. Lloyd Kaufman is very political, but on the end of being very anti-corporate. And so it's like, and also his whole thing is entertain first. The message is about like such a small percentage of the movie. You don't even notice it really. So Biggles Metz says, I watch all those awful spoof movies now. I think they are great, even though they are so bad. I'm with you. I just find them entertaining as hell. Like a lot of stuff comes into Film Threat. Alan, you must see all the stuff. If you're a filmmaker, you could submit your movie to Film Threat. You just go to filmthreat.com.
And believe me, horror, we will review it. We have people who are dying to see low budget horror.
What are some of the worst ones you've seen?
What was that?
What are some of the worst ones
recently? I think Gnome Mercy was the recent bad one.
It's like a killer gnome. Like GNOME.
Yeah. And I think it's ominous when the trailer starts with a girl peeing in the forest.
Well, there you go.
Two people have mentioned Velocipaster, and that's an amazing movie. And one of our best watch parties, I have to say, was the Velocipaster watch party.
Yeah, we do these things on the Film Threat YouTube channel called watch parties, where we'll watch an indie movie. We have the director and the cast on. It's fun. Sometimes we get some big people to be on. We had Tony Hawk on for one. David Cross was on one of our watch parties. But yeah, check out some of the past watch parties. It's basically like a live DVD commentary. So if you already have the movie, or you can see it, just watch the movie, have the watch party like on your phone or iPad or whatever, and then you kind of get a live commentary. Our special guest is joining us momentarily here. Let's introduce him. The film is Occupation Rainfall. The director is Luke Sparke. He is here to join us on the Film Threat podcast. Luke, thank you for joining us today. How you doing?
Not bad. How are you guys?
Great. Can I just comment? I'm loving your background. You've got some like old school Star Wars toys back there. I see a Luke Skywalker with the telescoping lightsaber that comes through his arm. Is that the old one there? I can just see.
It's actually a modern reversion one that Hasbro is putting out. The Black Series, about the A-Big of the old versions.
Sweet. Well, our chat is here. They've got questions for you. So queue up your questions for Luke Sparke about his movie Occupation Rainfall. But tell us what led to this movie. I was telling everyone watching about the film and sort of epic scale. It's very grand and kind of like starships and things we have not seen, things that I haven't seen. You're obviously a fan of genre stuff. You assembled an incredible cast. Tamura Morrison, Ken Jeong is in it. Tell us like what led to getting this project made.
Yeah, I made a first occupation movie back in 2017. It was really, really sort of low budget Australian fighting aliens in the bush. But that film grew a bit bigger as I got Tamir Morrison on board and a bunch of other people. And then when I sold that in America, we all decided to make a sequel quite quickly. But this time I didn't want to be limited by the scope. I wanted to tell the story, and I pushed to make it a bigger script. And I kind of shot what you see in the movie, plus we added a bit more in post. So it was a really sort of indie fair, even though it's this big, massive scope, like you pointed out. It was really, just a couple of guys, in post, putting it all together, really small team on set. But, we got this as big as I could scope out of it. So it was a very, very interesting way of doing it. Very hard.
Well, it's so like, it feels like a big movie, and it's amazing that it's possible now to do like these incredible effects and on an indie scale. I think the other one that comes to mind to me is Gareth Edwards' first film. What was that? It was Monsters, right? Was it
Monsters? Yeah.
Monsters, yeah. Like that movie just felt so epic, and it was literally like him and his brother doing the effects, right? Like
yeah.
What was your approach to making this film feel so grand?
I think we had to really sit down early on and work out, what we're going to do on green screen to make it. Obviously we can't go film in real battlefields and cities and all that kind of stuff. So we had to make all that up, and really had just a lot of planning to really figure out what's going to be practical, what can we put in, in extensions, and it was just lots of talking, because I think there was 2,500 visual effects shots in the film. So that's a lot of planning to get those right. That's basically it. And that was just me and my visual effects supervisor kind of just coming up with things on the fly and just wondering, is this how they do it, over even in Hollywood? And I've worked on a lot of, Hollywood films in my past life as behind the scenes crew before I became a director. So I was able to draw on some of that experience to make sure that, I figured this is kind of the way that they do it. And just really figuring out as we went, which was kind of fun, but still hard.
I remember when the original Star Wars films came out, they would brag about the number. We have 700 effect shots. So you've done that by more than triple, 2,500 effect shots. Does it feel kind of daunting?
Yeah, of course it felt daunting at the time. And while not every effect shot turned out the way I wanted to, it's still a swing for the fence, when you're dealing with that many shots. And I still love the old Star Wars films and how the practical models, they still hold up really well today.
Yeah, I mean, they do. Were you inspired by all of that? What were some of the influences that you brought into the film? And Alan was just telling me in the private chat, we have and I'll tell the audience, there's a review of Occupation Rainfall at filmthreat.com on our front page right now. We like to time, because it's out today. Is that right?
It's out, yeah, in America now. Yep.
Awesome. So how do you even I
hope it's a good review.
It's a good one.
It is a good review. But
okay.
But also how do you even when you look at what George Lucas did, he didn't just make the first Star Wars. He built a company to do effects that couldn't be done at the time. So he innovated technologies so he could make the movies he wanted to make. How do you, now that you're living in a time you kind of have at least the benefit of knowing how George originally did it, how do you apply that now to your project?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think it's not copying his terminology and copying his way, but it's definitely, like you said, it's great to have it there as the backbone of how he did it. And I'm a huge, I have to, obviously with the Star Wars stuff behind me, I'm a huge George Lucas fan. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Spielberg, Cameron, all the stuff throughout the 80s, Aliens and Terminator. And so it's all massive influences to me. And then in the 90s, Roland Emmerich with Independence Day is an obvious one as well. I think Independence Day for me was my Star Wars. I grew up in the 80s, so I didn't get to experience them in the cinemas until the special editions. But when I saw Independence Day, I was high schooler, and I walked out and I was just oh my God, that was amazing. And again, they used practical effects and they used the same ideas, just a bigger version of them, a more modern version. And not only do I love those films, I love reading about how they made them and all the books and the behind the scenes. And I sort of spent my childhood sitting on a beanbag just watching the behind the scenes, how they made it, more than watching the movies. So I took all that on board as I'm on set and that, to come up with these ideas and come up with the ways and means to get this done. And it's also just a passionate team of people around you, and that helps as well. And people have the same ideas and aspirations.
It's funny you mentioned the behind the scenes. Paul Thomas Anderson famously said, like, don't go to film school, just listen to DVD commentaries. So when the DVD comes out, will you eventually do a commentary?
Yeah, I've already done my commentary, so it will be on the Blu-ray. I think the Blu-ray is coming out pretty quickly as well, so it's already here in Australia. So yes, I have done a commentary. I've done a commentary myself, and also a commentary track with some team members as well. So we kind of went a bit all in on that one because there's a lot to talk about, all the different ideas and ups and downs we had to make the film. There's like sequences in the film where there's like a Sydney battle over the sky of Sydney, and that was like I came up with that during post-production, and we just got actors back in, filmed them in the cockpit, and then added this whole extra sequence in just to keep, I just came up with ideas, and luckily the team around me, liked them, and we got to do them, and just came up with, we're pulling shots of, sort of drone shots that you can buy online, just stock footage, coming up with ideas of stock footage, and then we added fighter jets in and added stuff, and the special effects guys are throwing me ideas, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool stuff, and then that puts me on another idea sort of thread to go, let's put some more of that in. So it was interesting. It was interesting hearing everyone's ideas.
Well, I know we talked a lot about the special effects and sort of the grand epic scale of it, but like you also put together this amazing cast. So how did you get to know Tamura Morrison and get him to be in, to be a part of this project? I mean, and then just also the other cast members, and what's it like, okay, now you've got them there, what's it like working with those actors, and how did you assemble that team?
Yeah. Well, Tem was in the first Occupation movie I did back in 2017, but to get him for that was like a coup for me. Obviously, again, being a Star Wars fan, being Jango Fett, when they came up in casting, I was like, wow, that could be cool. And he was over here doing something else at the time in Australia from New Zealand, and we sat down, had a coffee together, and talked more about Star Wars than we did about this show. But once I talked to him, and he's like, oh, Luke, you're a fan. I love it. You're a fan. And and we just kind of really hit it off. And he's just such a gentle presence to have around set, and he loves filmmaking. I think he wants to be a director. He keeps telling me that he would love to direct something. So he was always coming over to meet the camera and being like, "What's your next shot? What are you doing this for?" So that was always fun to have him around. And then once he came on, actors attract actors. You get a roll-on effect, then in Occupation 2, I was able to bring him back and have Ken John come on in, and that was through a contact I had in LA through my manager. And he rang me up, and he just kind of got it straight away. He's just like, Luke, I know what you need. I know what the scene needs. I know what I am in this movie, and I will kill it for you. And I said, great. And he came over, and I think we shot his whole thing within 3-4 days. He was in, he was out, and back to The Masked Singer and everything else that he does in America. So yeah, it was just, and he cracked the crew up, just obviously having Ken John around on set's just fun. And then later on during the post-production, we got Jason Isaacs, which was another great get for me as a fan of Harry Potter, and a bunch of other films that he's done. And he came in and recorded his lines over the phone during COVID, during all the lockdowns. So that was another interesting angle, that I couldn't fly anywhere to do post-production. We had to do it all remotely, and we had computers set up, and it's during the early days of COVID during 2020. So now it's kind of normal to do remote, but 2020, everyone was kind of like, what are we doing? Are we directors going to fly down? No. So that was, challenges all the way through.
We've got a lot of questions and comments in the chat. Would you mind going through some of these comments? Here we go. You can see in there, Patrick Lemire says, amazing cast. Question here from Bill 4393. Will there be a director's cut of Occupation Rainfall? He says, I mean an extended edition.
No. The film you see is my cut. Like there's some other scenes in it on the Blu-ray. There's going to be some deleted scenes on there. They're not much. There's probably the most deleted scene is the main character Matt sort of meeting a little girl from the first movie and having like a breakdown that she lost her dad. But I cut it because if you hadn't seen the first movie, it didn't make like any sense. And I wanted this movie to stand on its own as much as it's a kind of semi-sequel to the first one. I just cut it. So what you see here is is my director's version of the film, and I've been, a few critics have already commented like, oh, the battle scenes are too long, they should have been cut down to a 90-minute movie. So I think if I added anything more, people would be really angry at me.
Bill goes on to say, as more comments, OMG, I loved Occupation Rainfall. I watched it. So that's awesome. And he says, I love the scene where the alien ship flies through an explosion following a vehicle.
Yeah.
So, and then Patrick Lemire says, Viva real light hitting real miniature, etc. So there you go. And Bill also asks, is there going to be a third Occupation movie? I mean, you kind of need to complete the trilogy, right? I mean, everything's a trilogy these days.
Yeah. Well, at the end of this film, I did throw up the title saying Occupation Rainfall Chapter 1 or Rainfall Chapter 1. So, yes, there is going to be another one. There's actually going to be an announcement next week coming out that it's in, like, I've already sort of announced it, but it's definitely, and the one coming out saying as part of a film deal I'm going to do is, that's one of them. So when I wrote these films after Occupation 1, I wrote like this massive story of kind of from worry to go of how these characters go from the beginning to the end, and how the aliens are, how they finish their story. And I'm not going to say whether they win or they lose, but just the whole sort of story. And we got to the end of this movie, and they're standing on the cliffs looking up at the aliens, and we like, yeah, let's just keep going. Let's just keep making the story. So yes, definitely.
And Starlaw asks, make your next movie longer than Logistics.
Right. I wish. I keep getting these contracts to like make smaller movies, shorter movies, 100-minute tight 100 minutes. I'm like, okay. So.
Well, earlier in our conversation, we were talking about the lengths of movies, how they've gotten to like, studio movies have gotten to like 2.5 hours, 3 hours, but it doesn't really feel earned. I feel like if you're going to make a 3-hour movie, it should be an epic or just tell the story in, 120 minutes or less, right? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, originally in my early career when I was making films, I was like pushing to have everything in there, and films are 2 hours these days, like you pointed out. But it's actually harder to make a shorter movie. It's easy to make a long movie because you can just throw everything in there. But I think for a filmmaker, and it's something that I want to challenge myself, is to like make a tight movie that's like absolutely got no fat, and let's just get it done. But there are some great examples of movies that are long that it doesn't. You walk out and you go, oh, that didn't feel 2.5 hours. There's heaps of those movies, but they're huge studio movies that are $200 million, and it is what it is.
And question here, Mark Clement says, who did the FX for Occupation Rainfall?
A whole bunch of people, mainly here in Australia. Some houses that worked on the Marvel movies out here. And again, during lockdown, everyone kind of shut up shop, and we were like at this point where we just finished shooting just as the coronavirus was like appearing, and then everyone kind of lost work for a little bit. So I had people from Marvel movies over here that were working on Shang-Chi and working on like Black Widow that they were doing out here, and they sort of all kind of jumped over to me to work on it, which was great, which was bigger than what I thought we were going to do originally. And then we had a lot of stuff, the little effects. Me and my guys in-house just did them, like just layers and compositing and some other little matte paintings. And then we had a bunch of freelancers all over Australia that we picked up just from talking on websites and LinkedIn and that, and just had a big team of freelancers that we just sort of gave them out a couple of 10 shots here, 12 shots there, and they kind of just did little bits and pieces. So it was a big massive effort to get it done.
That's great. And Bill has a very important question. Can you get Chris Gore a part in the third movie? Maybe a walk-on part. Can I? How would I do that? That's Bill's question. I didn't put him up to that.
Yeah, I mean, if we can fly you down to Australia and do a show out here, and sure, why not? I'm sure we can work out something.
That's a question I had, but you got Ken Jeong into the movie. Was it a big hassle to get him to Australia and on set in terms of the logistics of it?
Logistics, it's always tough with logistics. I try not to involve myself with the logistic part, but I know that we had to have cars waiting on the airport and take him straight to the hotel, and all that stuff that you have to do for someone with his stature of fame and that. He seemed happy. It all worked out okay. I'm sure the guys in the office pulling their hair out, but I just say make it happen, and they do it.
Good. Graham Robbins has a question here. Luke, based on your comment about the deleted scene, in your opinion, when does a film/series stop being self-referential or reverential and start being maybe more like nostalgia bait?
That's a good question. I think you're seeing the nostalgia bait more and more in films, and it's something that could be a problem. Luckily, so far, I think people are towing the line. Like I think the last Star Wars movie was kind of just nostalgia bait. I think that crossed the line. I think films like the new Scream movie probably didn't cross the line. It's like, enough to be, self-referential, but also doing its own thing at the end of the day. So I think there's fine lines. I think it's just it is a hard line for people, directors to walk in studios.
And let's see. Comment here.
Someone wrote, when there's no imagination. That's probably true.
Yeah, no, that's true. When there's no imagination. And then someone says Chris landed a cameo because of the chat. Thank you, Holy Hand Grenade. Well, first of all, Luke, congratulations on the film. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to us all the way from Australia. This is great. Everyone in the chat, check out. I know the trailer is online right now, so check out the trailer. You will be hooked and ready to check it out. And Luke, thank you for taking the time to talk to us on the Film Threat podcast today. We really appreciate it.
That's okay. I really appreciate it. Anytime in the future.
Yeah. Oh, and one last question. I think it's a good question. Bill says, was one of the influences of Rainfall Independence Day?
Yep. Yeah, it sure was. Like I said before, I watched Independence Day when I was in high school, and it was like my Star Wars for sort of blowing my mind and walking out and sort of imagining all these things. Actually, in the ride home of that movie is when I sort of imagined, what if alien ships attacked us in Australia and lights on the horizon, which I wrote into the first Occupation movie. So it was a very very big influence for me. The sequel, not so much.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us, Luke. Someone said earlier in the chat, Luke Sparkwalker. That could be.
That was my username from the very first day I joined the internet, right through to today. If you ever go on like theforce.net or any other sort of forums around, you see Luke Sparkwalker, it's me.
Oh my God. I used to read theforce.net. That was something. I was so obsessed with theforce.net. I used to refresh the page, waiting for new info about the prequels.
I was on there as Luke Sparkwalker back from 1998 or something when the internet first came out. So yeah, I still use it.
I know that I read your stuff 100%. Wow.
Probably.
Luke, thank you so much for joining us on the Film Threat podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. The chat, they all love you. And make sure to check out Occupation Rainfall. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Take care. Later. Bye.
Bye.
Well, there we go.
Wow. You just got a trip to Australia. That's amazing.
Well, we'll see. I mean, God, Luke, that is awesome. I know I keep talking about this, right? Like, we can complain about how the latest Star Wars, whatever it is, we don't like it, or the latest Star Trek. You need to seek out new things. We all need to seek out new things. And Luke is an example of, I believe, like a filmmaker that's just like, well, I'm just going to make something. Yeah. I'm going to make something. It's out there if you look. It's out there if you look for it. So I'm really,
and that's why we're here. Please just make your movie.
Yeah, make your movie. He gave us a thumbs up just as he was leaving. That's great. But I also want to thank everyone in the chat. Wow, like here we go. Gwen Stacy asked, but Chris, what new things? You heard so many on today's podcast.
Yeah.
There's so many, right? What have we talked about today?
Filmthreat.com. There's new things every day on Filmthreat.
Right. The Hyperions, Infinite Storm, Offseason, the director we talked to earlier, Occupation Rainfall. If you want a really good bad movie, anything from October Coast, okay? So I feel like it's those good bad movies are kind of like palate cleansers, right? It's like, and also the sting of it, like, I feel like I have friends will argue with them. It's like, look, if you only watch Star Wars and Marvel movies, you will be an unhappy person and you will be disappointed constantly. But if you broaden your palette, right, and look at other types of indie movies, whether they're documentaries, small indie schlock horror films, or even like movies like The Changed. I mean, The Changed is amazing. Or, just a lot of these films that we will talk about here. Yes, we're going to talk about the major movies, but indie films is our focus. It's the purpose. It's the mission of Film Threat. It's why filmthreat.com exists. It's why Film Threat was a magazine in the 90s, like way back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a story to tell, you can count on Hollywood not letting you tell your story. They're going to inject a bunch of things. And now it looks like if you want to write a story that's going to win an Oscar, you've got even more hurdles to cross.
Right. Well, it's just, I feel like you have to me, it was always like, no one should be surprised by this. I worked in a video store. I used to work in a video store in high school. In fact, the video store I worked at in Michigan, Royal Oak, Michigan, was Thomas Video, which is a famous store. In fact, famously, when it closed, Quentin Tarantino went to the store to buy films because there were so many rare VHSs and DVDs. And the thing that kept Thomas Video in business was the fact that they carried porn. They also carried unrated movies. So there was like catty corner from Thomas Video where it was like, it's actually in Clawson, Michigan, but like catty corner from it was a Blockbuster Video. But Blockbuster didn't carry porn, didn't carry unrated movies, didn't carry a lot of stuff that, like, they didn't have John Waters films. So
they are the gatekeepers of independent. They kept independent films out.
They carried independent films, and I lied about my age. I was 16 when I went in there, and I said, "Yeah, I'm 18." So I worked at which would be a scandal now, but look, I worked there through high school and part of college. I worked there. So, but the great thing is they carried stuff that was on, we used to just like the bottom of the shelf, right? Like the top of the shelf, you had your Ghostbusters, your Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, stuff like that. But your bottom shelf would be all the like trauma movies and weird stuff and Toxic Avenger. And that's what inspires me. It inspires me because you can do it. Everyone sitting in this chat, I am telling you, you can make your own movie. And when you see a movie like The Changed, which we talked about earlier, it's a very simple film by Mark Mangelo. It's just really simple. It's so intense. I mean, the great thing is Tony Todd is in the movie, but it's got this tone that just will creep you out throughout. And it's really worthwhile. And also you see that and you're like, oh yeah, I could make a movie on that scale. It's possible. So yeah. I just kept Gwen Stacy's picture up because I think it's inspiring. That's my attitude. That's my attitude toward, corporate factory filmmaking. That is my attitude. And it's not as if for example, Spider-Man No Way Home, right? It's like, that's an example of the planets aligning. I was not a big fan of the Tom Holland previous Spider-Man movies. And these, just like the planets align, that came together and was awesome, right? I mean, the best stuff is in the second half of the movie, but it really is it just is so well set up. And that's when all the planets align. It can work. It's a miracle to me when a decent movie comes out of Hollywood, because of just the way that the system, it's like, I feel like the deck is stacked against creators, but indie film, you have total creative control. When you look at a movie like The Changed, which we talked about earlier, that's an example of it working. So yeah. A lot of great comments here. Patrick Lemire, we had the same thing in Austin at Vulcan Video. Vulcan Video. There's another, Scarecrow Video. There's a lot of these video stores across the country that are kind of legendary, right?
Yeah, there's a chat about The Curtain, of which you entered the adult film area.
Yes, there was can I tell you a weird story about the weird thing was, there was a curtain, and you went behind that curtain and you'd see there was adult films there. And two weird things. We used to have a rewinder in the back to rewind films because people would just forget to rewind, but the worst thing was when people brought back adult films to return to the video store, they were never rewound, never. And you could see the point at which someone finished the movie. And I just say, you learned a lot about people based on when they turned off their VHS of their adult film. And I had this weird experience where this asshole gym teacher at my high school came in to rent a movie. I think he probably pretended not to recognize me. This guy was a prick, and gym class was not my favorite class. I was definitely true to my nerd roots. So he rented a movie and I saw him return it. I saw the name of the movie and it just was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. The movie was called Master-Slave Relationship. From my old gym teacher from high school who pretended not to recognize me. I was working there in college.
I will say my video store had a curtain, but it was a bead curtain. Which meant
really?
Anyone who walked through, everyone knew where they were going.
That's so.
And then I remember renting Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and there's a point in that movie that is worn out because of constant playing back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah. So anyways, really great comments here. We are going to wrap it up in just a minute, but we really thank you. Our audience is growing. We started out, there were just a few people watching us. Now we've got a whole group here. So I hope you will join us every Friday for the Film Threat podcast, Film Threat livecast here. We'll be bringing on more special guests every week that you can talk directly to the filmmakers. We want you to have the experience to talk to indie filmmakers, to get advice from them as you consider working on your own projects, or just, to get their perspective on what's happening in the industry. Because to me, the best stuff is happening in independent film right now. So please join us every week on Friday mornings for that. Monday, Alan is going to have a very special Film Threat livecast covering movies from South by Southwest. So that's going to be fun. So that's Monday night, I think at what time, Alan?
5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Cool. So 5 p.m. Pacific time on Monday, movies from South by Southwest. What are some of the films? You were telling me about this documentary you were watching.
The Kids in the Hall documentary. It just finally got access to it. I'm really excited about that one. I've been a fan of theirs since the beginning. There's a Jim Gaffigan movie that's really interesting. It's called Linoleum. And I think the movies, there's a definite difference between movies from South by Southwest compared to Sundance. And I think you're going to see that on Monday.
Yeah, I will say, and it's a Gungan, great comment. The barrier for entry doesn't exist. Make movies. This is why when I hear people complain, I can't stand that. When you're complaining, what you're doing is you're giving power to the studios to not hire you, right? But what did Gareth Edwards do, right? He just went down to Mexico and made a film with a couple of actors he was friends with and just made that movie Monsters. You should watch his first film. He's the director of Rogue One, among other things. But Gareth Edwards, check out his first movie, Monsters, right? Christopher Nolan's first movie, Following, shot in 16 millimeter. He shot it over a summer. He didn't go into debt. He could afford one reel of film. Once the film was done, going through the gate, that was it. He could afford film and processing, and that was it. And it's a black and white 16 millimeter movie that played slam dance. There is no barrier for entry. No one is telling you can't do anything. Whenever I hear people like, oh, the industry is keeping me out. No, they're not. Don't wait for anyone to hire you. Don't wait for anyone to give you an opportunity, because you're giving power to someone else. You have the power. You have the power. It's just like, look, Dorothy heard this message. She always had the power to go home. She just didn't know it. Well, you have the power to hire yourself. You have the power to green light your own movie. Now, I don't recommend you go off and make a feature film right out of the gate. Start with short films. Start with making something accomplished that's 1 minute, 5 minutes, 20 minutes. And then suddenly you're making, you're making a big movie like Luke Sparke, and I can't believe that Luke Sparke Walker was like his username on the force.net. I think that's awesome. But yeah, it really bugs me with people complaining. It's like, no one ever told you couldn't make a movie. There are indie filmmakers from way back when who made independent films independent film has been around forever, right? George Romero, right? Sitting there in Pittsburgh, making these little monster movies, right? In 1968, Night of the Living Dead. Just go off and do it. So whenever I hear anyone complain, oh, the industry's not keeping you away, you are the person that's stopping yourself from getting out there and doing it. So I want to thank everybody. There's so many great comments here. Hail to the chat. Thank you guys.
Well, there's a good one from Hannibal. I'll bring it up.
Oh, sure. Throw it up.
Alan,
Alan, I'm crushing your head. I crush your head. I crush your head. It's a
I am so looking forward to this documentary. You have no idea. And if we were in South by South, if we were in Austin right now, I'd be in the presence of the kids in the hall.
And people are saying, yeah, there's no barrier. Your phone. I happen to have the new iPhone that has that new camera, the Pro camera. I got it. So
make a movie.
Yeah. So there you go. And Graham Robinson, just want to say Film Thread is such a nice getaway from the Sisyphean existence we are all enduring. So thank you so much, Chris and Alan. Keep it up. Thank you, Graham. And thank you for all your comments. We really appreciate it. And also, Alan, I am still waiting for Brain Candy to get a Blu-ray release. That was the Kids in the Hall movie.
Yeah. I was not a big fan of Brain Candy, but
yeah, there you go. And It's a Gungan. Didn't Soderbergh make an iPhone movie? He did. He did. And I forget the name right now. But we gotta call it a day on this. Another great Friday, spending time with all of you and talking about movies. Monday live stream with Alan talking South by Southwest. We'll have another live stream, another Hollywood on the Rocks. We're going to be doing that. Which is going to be fun. I don't know who our special guest is, but it's always going to be someone interesting. And then a week from today, we're going to be talking about, we'll probably talk about some more South by Southwest movies, but I'm really excited to talk about this movie X. Has anyone seen the trailer for this? It comes out a week from today. I'll be seeing it on Thursday. Yes, Unsane was the film. Romina Jones. Thank you, Romina. We appreciate that. It was called Unsane, and I did see it. And High Flying Bird was his series on an iPhone. Thank you, Ramina. That's awesome.
Yeah, welcome.
So there you go. So yeah, I'm looking forward to X. I will have my review. Alan will have some reviews of other films. So thank you. We're going to do our best to get to all your chat questions. Hopefully Super Chat will be re-engaged by Monday. And thank you again. That's it for us. Go out and see a movie, but better yet, go out and see an indie movie, support indie film, and get inspired.